Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 7 of the Java tutorial. In this session I'm going to talk about strings, and you will see that string, which we used already in our first program, the Hello World example, is actually a class in Java. So, what does it mean? Well, just to summarize what we learned so far about classes and objects. We can program our own classes to define our own data types. So, for example, we did this with the class point. We implemented the class point such that we were able to create objects of that type with x coordinate, y coordinate. Well, and for that we also needed to implement a constructor. The constructor allowed us then to instantiate objects of our class right away with the correct attribute values. So in just one line of code here, I was able to create a new point object with coordinate 10 and coordinate 2. So here I'm calling the constructor, and the constructor is creating a new point object with these attribute values. And in my class point, there the constructor looks like this. Yeah, so new objects are created with a constructor. Now let's talk about the class string. It's also such a data type which is described in a class. So it's different from the primitive data types. It's unlike double or int, which are primitive data types. You can see that already, that string has this uppercase character. Yeah? So that is different for double and int, where you have lowercase characters, I and D. Well, and so the difference of the class string compared to other classes is that, well, there's a special way to create new objects of this class. We don't need to call a constructor. Instead, we can create a new object just using these parentheses, and that is kind of a constructor call. Yeah? So let's look at this example. What I'm doing here in this line of code is, yeah, you can think of this as the call of a constructor. I have my variable s, which is of type string. That's not a primitive type, but a class. And although it's a class, I'm not using like a constructor call here. Instead, I'm generating this new object just using these parentheses, and in between those are the characters that I would like to have in my string. So that's a special form here for strings to generate new objects. Then there are interesting things about strings to tell. So first of all, what I'm trying here is maybe to convert this string into a double number. And we talked about conversion from double to int, for example, already. And unfortunately, such a simple conversion using this casting operator is not possible. So we cannot simply take this string object s and cast it to double. Well, because in general that's not possible. If you have a string like hello world, how should then this string be converted to a double number? That's undefined. Well, and of course, printing this number d then would not be a problem. But the error occurs here in line 4 of my code, namely Java, my types test.java line 4, error, incompatible types, string cannot be converted to double. Okay, but what I can do, I can use a method which is called passDouble, which is provided in the class double. So you should not confuse this with the primitive data type double that is written with a lowercase d. The class double with the uppercase D, it provides methods to do something with doubles. And this method, pass double, it takes a string as argument and it returns a double number, a double variable representing this string. And now that works really nicely in this example. Yeah? So I can compile this code without error. I can then run this code without exception. And actually, yes, this code is then working. I get as output 10.0, exactly what I would have expected. I would also like to point out that, of course, this method, it works not for every input, not for every string. If our string looks like this, for example, 10.0a, well, what should be the result of passing this to double? It's of course unclear. And therefore, the Java interpreter, when we run the project, when we run the program, it's throwing an exception. It says exception in thread main java.lang.number format exception for input string 10.0a and so forth. Yeah, so there this exception occurs, and that's of course a problem. The program crashes. Yeah, so we as programmers should be careful about what we put here into these round brackets, the method arguments of my method pass double. That's it, however, for now. Next session will be about methods in more detail. Thank you very much.